So ending with B, and the Word was with God, we have this idea of an article before God, the word the. We don't translate, and the Word was with the God, but, hello, yep, notes. I did as you asked, and I put the pronunciation on there for you. See? I remembered things. Tell my wife that, she'll argue with you. But sometimes I remember things, I guess. Okay, so this idea of the article, and you see that word ton there, and we see the word, the O there, ha, logos, the word. Both of these are the article. In Greek, as we said, in Greek, Greek does not have, it's out of order, I think. Oh, I went all the way back to the beginning. Greek does not have an indefinite article, so there is no a or an. They only have the definite article, which is the. I didn't go back. Yep, one article. And when a noun appears with the article, it is always definite. So we know that this is God of the Old Testament, Yahweh God. When it's speaking of God, this is not, and the Word was with a God or was with some kind of divine quality. It was definitely God that he was with, and no one argues about that, because when an article appears with a noun, it is always definite. Okay, so why does it appear differently than the article that is before the word? Greek is a highly inflected language, which means that it conjugates almost every single one of the words that appear in the sentence. And so in Greek, the word order is both important and unimportant compared to English. So we're going to learn some English. The man threw the ball. Now, in English, if I want to know who is doing the action and who is receiving the action, it just depends on where it falls within the sentence. So you can see there we have the man. The is the article. Man is the subject. Threw the ball, well, I should start with that. The man is the subject. Threw the ball is the predicate. Threw is our verb. The ball is the direct object. Okay, so we know, how do we know that the ball is not throwing the man? Because the ball comes after the verb. That is the only reason that we know that the ball is not throwing the man, unless you're speaking in Yoda speak. The ball, the man, even then, the ball the man threw. That's how you, right? But we don't normally talk that way, so that's all right. But yeah, that would be the only way that you could put that before and make it still mean the same thing. Anyway, I had to throw a Star Wars reference in there. But so the man threw the ball. We know that the man is the subject because it appears before the verb, and we know that the man is acting upon the predicate because the ball appears after the verb. In Greek, this is not necessarily the case. It can be the case, but it doesn't have to be the case. The way that you're going to tell which is the subject and which is the predicate is going to depend upon the conjugation of the noun within the sentence. So, in 1.1b, we have a fairly standard sentence. The Word was with God. So we have a subject, we have a predicate, we have a verb, we have a preposition thrown in there too. So ha logos, the Word, is the subject, and proston theon is the predicate, was with God is the predicate. Ein is the verb because it's was, so the logos was with. Pros is a preposition, it's explaining how he was with. And then we have two new words that we don't have in English. Nominative and accusative. In Greek, when a when a noun appears in the nominative case, it is the subject of the sentence. When a noun appears in the accusative case, it is the predicate noun, or the direct object. So, the word order can switch around, but as long as these appear in those two conjugations, we will always know which one is the subject and which one is the predicate. Here is where our problem is with 1.1c. Theos en ha logos. Literally, God was the word, at least according to word order. Theos is in the nominative. We have ein as the verb, and ha logos is also in the nominative. So you have two subjects, and the reason for that is because of how the word order is, or how the sentence is functioning. Go back one. The man threw the ball. So the direct object, the subject, how are the subject and the direct object, which is the direct object of the ball, subject being the man, how are they relating to one another? The man is modifying or acting upon the direct object by means of the verb. In a statement of equality, though, which is what we have in 1.1c, God was, or the word was God. The two nouns are being equated with each other. So the subject is not acting on the predicate or on the direct object. There is no direct object. So that's why they both appear in the nominative. So the question is, for the translator, for the interpreter, how do we know which one is the subject noun and which one is the predicate noun? That would be the question. And remember, going back, what is the issue with Jehovah's Witnesses? Jehovah's Witnesses want to say that because theos does not have the... Help you find something?
We're looking for chairs. Ours are all one.
Okay, so because logos has the definite article in front of it, we know it as the word, but theos does not have a definite article in front of it, and so they want to say that it can mean a God. The question, which is the subject and which is the predicate, is going to answer why is that definite article not there. In a normal sense, the subject acts upon the direct object. In a statement of equivalence, the word was God. The subject does not act upon the predicate. Hence, in Greek, both the subject and the predicate appear in the nominative case. Okay, so we already said that. In Greek, the way to tell the subject noun from the predicate noun in a statement of equality is the subject noun has the article, it's arthrous or articular, and the predicate noun does not, anarthrous. So in our clause here, theos ein ha logos, which one is the predicate and which one is the subject? Right, because it's got the article. And theos does not, because it's the predicate noun. So the reason that it's not there is not because it's indefinite. Or it could still be indefinite, but that's not the reason. So being that what the Jehovah's Witnesses want to say is that the article is not with theos, therefore we can read it as indefinite, what would the question be to ask them immediately as soon as they point that out? Can anybody think of a good question that you should ask them as soon as they say the article is not there? Could, but I think in terms of trapping them in their own statements, it would be good to ask them a question that they can't answer. You guys think of something?
How does it, can you relate it back to the previous statements then?
What?
That kind, well, being that those are at the definite?
Specifically about the article being here and not being
Oh,
here.
okay.
What should we ask them?
You tell us. I want the answer.
If we put the article there, would it change the meaning of the sentence?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or conversely, if I put the article there, would it say what if the Jehovah's Witness is saying that as it's written, it's not saying what I'm saying, which is that the Word was God. If I put the article there, does that then become the Word was God? The answer is no. So, in which case, because if you put the article there, now both of them become the subject noun, which means the two are interchangeable entirely. So, all that God is, the Word is. All that the Word is, God is. So, you have Unitarianism. There is no person, there is no multiplication of persons in the Godhead. The Word is not different than the Father. The Word is all that God is. So what's that?
Would that be wrong then?
That is wrong. Because that would mean
So
that
it has to be left out.
it has to be left out in order to, so then so you're saying what I wanted to get to, which is that if, the next question would be, if I wanted to write the word was God, how would I write it if you're saying that this doesn't say that? This is the only way that you would write that. To say that the word was God, you would write it this way. So, they have a huge problem there, which is that if they're saying that this does not say what we're saying it is, if this does not say the word was God, then how do we write the word was God? There's no answer for that, because this is how you write the word was God. Okay? You guys understand that? Okay. Hello. You can sneak in.
You can't sneak in because there's no attention.
Okay. Any questions on that? You guys understand that?
I'll probably just need to hear it again.
Hear it again?
No, eventually.
Okay. I can restate it again. So, yeah, let's go over it again.
I know, that's what I'm saying, I'll probably have to do it, because I'll forget by tomorrow.
Okay.
Do you have a podcast on this?
Yes. Yes. We actually, I started writing this class, and then we stole it from the class just to have material to talk about. So it's kind of a repeat. That's all right. Okay, so the man threw the ball. You have the subject, the verb, and the direct object, right? Because the subject is acting on the direct object, which is the ball, and we know which is acting on which one based on where it falls in the sentence. So in 1.1b, the word was with God. In Greek, we have the nominative and the accusative, and that's going to tell us which one is the subject and which one is the direct object. And we know that the word was with God, the word is the subject, and God is the direct object because the word appears in the nominative and God appears in the accusative, which is why you have the definite article looks different, and theos, normally the way it is, it's instead theon. In 1.1c, theos ein ha logos, 1.1b. Theos ein ha logos, God was the word. Both of them appear in the nominative. So how do you tell which one is which is the subject? We went over that. The subject, it has the article, and the predicate noun does not have the article. Okay? So, even though it says, God was the word, notice that the word order is flip-flopped. Even though it's flip-flopped, we know that the word is the subject and God is the predicate because the word has the word the with it, has the article with it. Okay? She better not
She
object.
said, good job, Dad.
Okay, so how do we understand that then? So if we said that there's a reason that the article is not there, can we still read it as indefinite? Excuse me. When an anarthrous predicate noun, anarthrous means that it does not have the article. When an anarthrous predicate noun appears before the verb, so this is we said the word order is both important and unimportant in Greek. It's unimportant in that it doesn't function the same way it does in English. Okay, so the word order does not tell you what part of speech the word is. It is important, though, because it can sometimes draw out emphasis. Sometimes the construction has a specific meaning to it. So it's the word order is definitely important, but it's not important the way it's important in English. So thinking from an English person, from an English speaker's standpoint, it's both important and unimportant. When an anarthrous predicate noun appears before the verb, it is sometimes definite, rarely indefinite, and usually qualitative. In 1.1c, it's best understood as qualitative. So in the notes from last week, I had my interpretation of it, which is that all that God is, the word also was. Because God is being used, the word God is being used as a quality to describe the word. This does not mean, okay, so let me not get ahead of myself. Okay, so it states that in 1.1a, the word exists in eternity, which theologically is impossible for multiple beings to inhabit together, so the word cannot be a God. So remember we said that we want to, before we get to 1.1c, we want to kind of pigeonhole 1.1c by talking about 1.1a and 1.1b. And so we want to draw our conclusion before we even get to 1.1c so that you can only read it in the one way. 1.1a, the word exists in eternity because of the verb. The verb we said was an imperfect verb, meaning that it's an action that's continuing over a period of time. So if you have in the beginning was existing the word, then the word is transcending the beginning. He was already at the beginning when the beginning became what it was. So that means he's before time began. If there's no time, and we're Jehovah's Witnesses, we're going to say that the word was created. If there's no time, when was he created? If there's no time, and therefore there can be no change without time, because change necessitates time in order to be change, how do you have two beings having two separate wills independent of one another, existing when there's no time for them to be independent of one another? You see how that makes that an impossibility? At least logically it makes an impossibility. At the very least, if there's no time, when do you create a second being? There is no when. So you have to get them to answer the question, how is it that God can create this firstborn through which everything else is created if there is no when to create it and he is not equal with God? There's no answer for that. They're not going to be able to answer that. 1.1b notes a distinction in person between God and the Word. So remember our Trinitarian language, which is this is not a distinction in being, it's a distinction in person. So God and the Word are different persons, but according to 1.1a, they must be the same being. They must be the same being because they're existing in timeless eternity. So it is preferred not to equate the two, which would be better stated in another way grammatically. So we talked about, what's your question to the Jehovah's Witnesses when they say that the article is not there with theos? Well, if we put it there, what would it mean? It would mean oneness of person. Okay? And we're not saying that because we're Trinitarian. We want distinction of person. And the Word was with God the Word cannot be with God in any kind of a spatial or relationship, spatial relationship or personal relationship if they're the same person. That would be some strange form of schizophrenia. So, it's best understood as qualitative. In a qualitative understanding, all of the attributes of the qualifying noun are applied to the referent noun. Okay, what this does not mean is that it is a, whatever your noun is a noun-like quality. So, the word, if we want to say, and some translations have this, that and the word was divine, or the word was divinity, that's fine, so long as what you mean by divinity is that there can only be one God and the word is God. So no matter how you translate it, you need to understand that theos, because it's a qualitative noun, the word has to have all of the attributes of the noun that's qualifying it. Okay, so you eat a piece of really rich chocolate cake and you say this cake is divine. Does that mean that this created all that the cake created all that is? No. So in English we have a different that idea of quality. It kind of takes a different meaning. In Greek, it's something very specific. So let's look at. I said.
I have a question.
Sure.
I understand which is the qualifying noun and which is the referent noun.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you, is that because one has an article and one doesn't? Or
We're
how
gonna.
do you know which is the qualifying noun?
The qualifying noun is going to be the predicate noun. So all that God is, the word was. Right.
Okay.
We'll get to why that is in just a second. Okay, so it's best understood as qualitative. Okay, and I said last week I wanted to show you pages from New World Translation. And here is their appendix to their interlinear Greek New Testament. Forgot what the name of it is. I think it's just the interlinear New World Translation. Anyway, here's the appendix. They have an appendix on John 1:1, and if you can read that, because the lettering is small, if you can read it, it says. If I can find it. It merely expresses a certain quality about the word or logos, but it does not identify him as the one or the same as God, the one and the same as God himself. These translations which use words such as a God, divine, godlike, because the Greek word theos is a singular predicate noun occurring before the verb and is not preceded by the definite article. So they're saying exactly what we're saying. Okay, the articular construction of the noun points to an identity, a personality, whereas a singular anarth, so whereas a noun that is without the article and is in the predicate position preceding the verb points to a quality about someone. So they're saying the same thing that we are, but what is it that they're saying? It merely expresses a certain quality about the word. So they're taking this as meaning that the word was a God because he's sort of like God, but he's not God himself. And we want to say that everything that noun is, the word also is. So, and then they have this big list, and you can read the rest of it. They have this big list of a whole bunch of places in the New Testament where the article does not occur, and we would translate it as a whatever it is. And so they're making a mistake because they're seeing qualitative as the same as indefinite, and in their concluding paragraph, following is a list of instances in the Gospel of Mark and John where various translators have rendered singular anarthrous predicate nouns occurring before the verb with an indefinite article to denote the indefinite and qualitative. That's the important part right there. Okay, so wordy. So here's a list of instances in Mark and John where translators have seen a noun that is a predicate noun that does not have the article and appears before the verb, and here's our confusion. Before the verb with to denote indefinite and qualitative status of the subject. So they're seeing them as the exact same thing. Let's go to an actual Greek scholar. My cursor. Dan Wallace, professor of New Testament Greek at Dallas Theological Seminary. It is not. He says a couple things. Here's his picture of how he wants to understand these. So, in talking about qualitative, what do you call this? A Venn diagram? Is that correct? Right. In talking about a qualitative noun, it has properties that are indefinite, but it has properties that are also definite. But it's neither indefinite nor definite. It's qualitative. So it's not. So what is it that, in saying that the Word was God, what is it not saying about the Word? It's not saying that it's definite that He is all that there is to God. At the same time, it's not saying that it's indefinite, that He's just similar to God, but that everything that you can say about God, you can apply to Him. And I'm not going to go find it. He actually goes through that big list. That the Jehovah's Witnesses have and shows where they're wrong. And just lose my. There we go. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, he actually goes through that list, and one of the problems with what is the problem with their list there, which is that we said that this is. The construction here is a construction of equality, and not all of their examples that they're giving are making an equality between two different things. So their construction's a little bit different. Look at 1 John 4:8. The one who does not love does not have God, for God is love. For hatheos agape estin. Hatheos has the article. Agape, love, does not have the article. And it is before the verb. Is God a love? Is God the love? He's neither. He is love. Everything that we can say about love, God is. And if you don't have that love, then you do not have God. Right? So we see the same construction. And obviously they're not following the construction. But we see the same construction, and we see how the word love is qualifying who God is. And we're taking the attributes of what love is, in particular agape love, and attributing it to God. Since no argument exists that says theos, that God in 1C is the same person as God in 1B, so no one's saying, between Jehovah's Witnesses and Trinitarians, no one's saying that that God in 1.1c is the same person as God in 1.1b. Since no one's saying that, all the attributes of ton theon in 1b, where the noun is definite, should be applied to the word 1c. So we know that since the article in 1b is with God, this is the definite God. When we come to 1.1c and it said the word, that all that God is, the word was, or the word is God-like, how do we understand that God-likeness, that deity? How do we understand that quality? We do it by what we know as definite, which is 1.1b. So if the Word was with God, and we're taking this word God and we're applying it to the Word, what is it that we're applying? What attributes are we applying to? What attributes are we applying to the Word in 1.1c? We're applying everything that God in 1.1b is. So deity is a good translation, but it has to be understood in the above manner, not in the English sense, which is what I got through with the whole chocolate cake thing. Okay. Okay. Did I kind of answer your question?
You answered my question real quick at the beginning.
Okay. How can I explain it better for you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay.
That Venn diagram thing was helpful.
Okay. There you go. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Going back to what Scott had asked last week, is there, when he was asking if they were basically intentionally deceitful to the people, is that
Okay.
just,
I'm sorry.
just
Two
that?
Scots. I'm like, Scott
Yeah,
wasn't here
that
that. Yeah. Yes.
Are they just translating it very badly, or are they intentionally twisting it to be deceitful when they're writing in that?
The heart is sinful above all things. Who can know it? Of course, they're doing it intentionally. But it is both a very, very simple explanation and a very trite and not well thought through defense. And at the same time, they have reason to believe it, so to speak. And this is that complicated point with exegesis, which is that I can't come down hammer on nail and say there is absolutely no positive any way whatsoever that you can read it the way that they're saying. It's just extremely, extremely, extremely implausible. Okay? Given all that we've said about this verse and all of our presuppositions that when we talked about the first 4 weeks about who God is and talking about the nature of time, and now we come to 1.1a, that's why I'm saying that you want to make your argument before you get to 1.1c, because when it comes to grammar, it's almost impossible to just say, that's impossible, right? So, however, though, it's a very, very simple, what are they saying? The article is not there, therefore I can read it as a God.
Right.
And it's simple, and it's not very well thought out, and the guy that we just looked at, Dan Wallace, when he comes to his conclusion about what it means when the article isn't there, he basically mocks them because it's simple and they're inconsistent in translating it as well. But can you say that it's impossible? No. You know? Yeah, that's, yes.
Well, I mean, there's several million Greeks in the world these days. How do they read it? You know, and
Modern Greek's different than Koine Greek.
okay,
Completely
so-
different language.
So the people who were speaking the Greek, though, there were heresies back then too,
Mhm.
when they were doing the translation. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are really building on an issue that was there in the year 200 probably.
Mm-hmm. As far as, I don't know if they were, Scott, do you know, were they making that, I don't think the Arians were making that argument from the Greek back then, because they would have been speaking Greek. I don't think that they were making that particular, I think that that's a Jehovah's Witness argument as far as I know. I don't even think in the Reformation that the Socinians and the other non-Trinitarians were making that argument back then either. I think this is specifically a Jehovah's Witness and a New World Translation issue. There may have been there may have been in maybe see this talking about what it is that they're arguing specifically about rendering it a God and rendering it indefinite may be a New World Translation issue. Obviously, and when I showed the slide from their Bible, there have always been people who have understood it that way, you know, but they've translated it in other ways for other reasons. They see it as that quality, but they just take, as like a divine quality or something like that. But that specific argument of the article isn't there, therefore we can read it as a God, I think that's going to be limited to the New World Translation.
The New World Translation, the English translation is the Jehovah's Witnesses focused on English.
Yes.
So
They have,
you
well,
see some small
they're,
congregations out there.
well, I mean, they're a worldwide thing, and if you go on their website, they have translations in it's like 400 languages or something like that. I mean, they have a lot of different translations out there. And they have a translation that's in Greek that looks completely different than the Greek that we're going to read because they have it in modern Greek, and it looks different. Yeah, I mean, it's the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. They're from Charles Taze Russell, and they're American. And so they're going to be focused on, at least when you read their history anyway, is going to be primarily American and English based. But yes, there are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. In that discussion group that I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, a lot of them from Africa, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses from Africa, a lot of them. Not so much from other parts of the world, some from Southeast Asia, mostly from Africa. Yes?
So I don't know this, and I don't have the right Greek Bible to check it, but I thought you might give me an idea how this verse shows up in like the Syrian and the Coptic and the early Latin.
That I don't know. No. I mean, I could look, but yeah, maybe after class. That's because I'm pretty sure that I've got the Bible in Chinese on here too, so. Yeah, we can look at that after class. Yeah, I'm not sure how it looks in that though. Okay, so, all right, so let's look now at the rest of, if you guys have your Bibles with, it'd probably be easier for you to follow along. Let's open up to John, and we're going to look at the rest of the, what's called the prologue to John, which is John 1:1 through 1:18. And I've got some things highlighted up here. And you're going to see these things highlighted throughout the prologue. And we want to look at how the things that we saw in the prologue are both directly relating to and are contrasting with the things that are also being brought up in the following verses. Okay, so starting with 2, should we just go ahead and read the prologue? Anybody want to read the prologue for me? Somebody just read it all the way through. To 18. Or you can split it up. That's fine with me. Don't have to read the whole thing.
I'll read it.
Okay, thank you.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Glory is of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me, because he was before me." And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God who is at the Father's side. He has made him known.
Thank you. Okay, so starting with verse 2, he, or this one, was in the beginning with God. So he's reiterating what we said in A and B. The same who the Word was in the beginning with God. In our Greek here, I've got this highlighted in blue. There's our word ein again. So when was he? When was he? What was he doing in the beginning with God? He was already existing in the beginning with God. So we're talking about transcendence yet again. And we have our two phrases are being repeated again. And hutos, this one was in the beginning, proston theon, with God. So in face-to-face relationship with God. Now here comes our contrasting point. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into beginning. Panta autu agenata kai chorus autu agenata uda en ha gegenen. These three words are all coming from the same stem, which is the Greek word ginomai, which means to become. So the word was being in the beginning. But in contrast to the Word who was, we have all things who are not him, and they all become. You see the contrast there? There is one, the Word, who was and was eternally existing, and who is and was, and doesn't have a beginning, but everything else has a beginning, and it's on account of him that it has its beginning. So, when we're talking about he was in the beginning with God, in the beginning was the Word, how is the beginning beginning? And like we said last week, the Logos is the arche. He is the source and the foundation of all that is. And all that is, nothing came into being that has come into being. And this is a really goofy and wordy construction even in the English. But that's really the idea. What John is kind of stamping this out by being repetitive with his language and saying there can't be anything apart from him that did not come from him. Because the Word was God. In him was life, and life was the light of men. There's our word was again. In him was life. There's ein again. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There came a man from God whose name was John. Here's our red word again. So all things came into being. Now, one thing that we also want to say is that there are sometimes when people talk about the Greek, there's kind of like this mystical, magical idea of like these words have these special meanings, and sometimes I can pull a meaning out of its context and go way over to this other verse over here and try to apply it here. They're just words, and sometimes they have a specific usage, and sometimes they have a common usage. So in most of our translations, there's going to say there came a man from God whose name was John. It just means a man came. However, I think that based on repetition, and I'm not the only one who has said this, based on repetition there, the idea is the contrast again, which is that the Word was, and all things became, and John was not. John became as well. So it could be understood as there became a man sent from God whose name was John. As in contrast to the Word who was from the beginning. All right? He came as, and look down here too, he was not the light. This word was, we're not reading into it all the theological import that we did in the first, because the fact of the matter is it's just the word was. On its own, it doesn't have all that theological import. It only gets that meaning from its context, which in John 1:1 was the beginning. So he was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light. Was the true light. Again, that's the capital ein. There was the true light, which, coming into the world, enlightens every man. He was in the world, ento cosmo ein. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. And there's our word became again. The world was made, or the world became through him. He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, even to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh, and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, this isn't exactly a statement of equality, but you have this issue again here, kai ha logos sarx agenita. Ha logos, definite article, nominative, noun, sarx, it's feminine, which is why it doesn't look the same, but, neuter. Sarx without the article, occurring before the noun. So the Word did not become a flesh, the Word became flesh. All that we can say about what man is, we can say about the Word after he became it. And he dwelt among us. This is an interesting word here. This word right here, and he dwelt among us, literally is he pitched his tent with us. He tabernacled with us. And we saw his glory. Glory is of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. You guys go back to 1 John real quick. And we'll wrap up here pretty quick. This is what we proclaim to you, what was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at and our hands have touched concerning the word of life. And the life was revealed, and we have seen and testify and announce to you that the eternal life that was with the Father and was revealed to us. What we have seen, what we have and heard, we announce to you too, so that you may have fellowship with us, and indeed our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ, that we are writing these things that our joy may be made complete. Look at how the personality of the Word became very flesh of very flesh. He was man. He was one of us. And John is saying that they saw him physically. And in 1 John, they touched him physically. He was not just an apparition. He was not just seeming like he was a man, but he actually became one of us. And he was the monogenes of the Father, the only begotten, or the unique one from the Father. John testified about him and cried out, saying, "This is he of whom I said, he who comes after me has a higher rank than I, for he existed before me. Hati protos mu ein, for before me he was." There's that word again. For of his fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. Backed up. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father, he has explained him. So, and there's, if you ever want to look up, there's a textual problem there, because the question is whether the only begotten God or the only begotten Son. And in the Greek, remember 2 weeks ago we looked at the ancient Greek text, and we said about how there were sometimes abbreviations in the text. In the Greek text, this would have been an abbreviation, and the difference between God and Son would have been one word, one letter. So they would have written theta sigma for God with a line over it, and then for Son it would be upsilon sigma. So, and it's only a matter of like a small line, and in some of the manuscripts it's written on the back side of the manuscript, which in papyrus papyrus has lines going all the way across it because you're only supposed to write on one side. So it's got a smooth side and a rough side. And so this line here, maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But either way, it's difficult to read. So there's a textual issue there, and if you ever want to look into it, go ahead and look into it. But the only begotten God, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has exegeted him. He has explained him to us. This word here is where we get our word exegesis from. So how is it that we know God? We know God by God condescending and coming to us and becoming one of us, pitching his tent, tabernacling with us. Everything that we can say about God, we can say about Christ, and everything we can say about man, minus sinfulness, we can say about Christ as well. And on Easter, that's what we're thinking of in the death and resurrection of Christ, which is that God condescended to us to become one of us and to fellowship with us so that we could become one with him. Any questions? Anybody like to close in prayer? 2 questions that always ruin everything. Does somebody want to read the Bible, and does someone want to close in prayer? Lord, we thank you for this day, and we just thank you for your word, and we thank you for the ability to study your word, and we thank you for the way that your Son, Jesus Christ, has explained you to us through taking on flesh, through condescending to us, through becoming one of us, that in death and in resurrection, our sins have been placed on him and have been propitiated, that your wrath has been totally satisfied in him because of his godness, and our sins have been placed on him because of his manness. We thank you for all that he is, and we thank you for his sacrifice. We thank you that you were pleased to crush him for our iniquities, that you sent him and he humbled himself and didn't hold on, didn't grasp to this idea that he was God, but became a servant, that he could do your will, which is to save those that he would. We just thank you for this, and we pray that you'll bless all of our days today, or all of the rest of our days today. And we just thank you for your word, and thank you for what you've done. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.